everybody, it's Mr. Wessner back to continue exploring the wonders of wetlands with the book Take a Wetlands Walk by Jane Kirkland. Now today we're going to begin exploring different types of wetlands, and we're going to start with the bog. So I've changed locations here. This is no longer Canoe Creek State Park behind me. Instead, this is Black Moshannon State Park because there are no bogs at Canoe Creek. However, there are bogs at Black Moshannon. So we're going to talk today about a bog, and it's a really cool place. Okay? Bogs are unique wetlands. They are a special place to see one of the most unusual adaptations in nature, meat-eating plants. These are plants that eat insects because they can't get nutrients from the soil in a bog. Now, you've probably all heard of the Venus flytrap before. That's kind of what they're talking about, although there are many different kinds of carnivorous plants. Insectivorous plants. They're not just the Venus flytrap. So let's find out about some other kinds here. These are plants that eat insects because they can't get nutrients from the soil in a bog. They eat insects because the soil contains a high amount of acid, and acid prevents soil nutrients from reaching the plants. So there's a reason that these plants have developed this adaptation, and it's pretty remarkable when you think about it. These plants have realized that to live in these areas, they need to be able to get nutrients from a source other than the soil. So that's what led to them becoming able to digest insects. Now, that acid does more than just that, though. It says the acid also prevents bacteria from growing. And as a result, when something dies in a bog, it takes a very long time to decompose. Bacteria are responsible for breaking down a life form that has passed away. So if an animal would die, normally bacteria are what cause it to rot away and decompose and return to the earth. But in a bog, that doesn't happen because there are no bacteria because of that acid. So, partially decayed vegetation there, the plants that have died, because the same thing happens to leaves in the forest, they break down and return to the earth. Well, partially decayed vegetation is called peat, P-E-A-T. Once, the body of a man dead for 2,000 years was found in a bog in Denmark, nearly perfectly preserved. They should have called him Pete. Now, you've got to check this out. I'll try to put a link down here in the comments, but search for the Tollund man, T-O-L-L-U-N-D. He's one of several bog bodies, and you can actually type in that in a search box as well, bog bodies. But it is unbelievable to think that this man, I believe his discovery was in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken. He had been dead for 2,000 years. His skin was still intact. You could still see facial hair. Unbelievable. Check it out. Make sure you do that Google search, or hopefully, like I said, I'll have a link below as well that you can click in the comments. But check it out. It's really amazing. When you explore a bog, look for meat-eating plants like pitcher plants. Watch for mammals, such as deer, bears, bobcats, hares, and beavers that visit the bog looking for food. Look for insects and listen for birds. Which plants and animals you see depends on the location of your bog. Now, let's take a look at the captions, and we'll take a closer look at some of those plants and things. So looking at the illustrations here in the captions, it says pitcher plants, top, are carnivores. Because they eat insects, they are also called insectivores. Sphagnum moss in the middle grows on the surface of peat in a bog. It is sometimes called peat moss. Did you know that we grow cranberries in bogs? And that's the bottom picture. When the berries are ready to be picked, we flood the bog, and they float to the surface where we can gather them by machine, which is what's shown there in that bottom picture. So if you've ever seen the ocean spray commercials, I think I mentioned that in another video, but that's kind of where those guys are standing, is in a cranberry bog. So bogs are pretty neat places. Now in the sidebar, we have a couple things. First of all, that word adaptation. We talked about how one of the most unusual adaptations in nature is found in the bog. What is an adaptation? Well, it's a change that a species makes to help it survive when its environment, food sources, or world changes. Adaptations take place over many generations. So eventually, over time, those plants realized they weren't going to be able to survive in the bog without the nutrients from the soil, so they developed the ability to eat insects. What's for dinner? Look inside pitcher plants and you might find a trapped insect on the menu. Now, I'm also hoping that in the comments I can put some links to some of these carnivorous plants, like the pitcher plant. I have a few videos I really have enjoyed and I thought were really educational that I found over the years of teaching this material. So check the comments, look for those links, and make sure you visit those other videos because it's really neat to see some of these carnivorous plants like the pitcher plant, like the flytrap, like the sundew in action. So you definitely want to check that out. Where in the U.S.? Bogs are found mostly in the New England states, the Great Lakes states, and across eastern Canada. So in the U.S., our bogs are in the northern latitudes, is what they're saying there. So the northern areas of the country. Bogs aren't the only peaty wetland. Another is the fen. A fen is different from a bog in that the soil is highly alkaline, low in acid, so sort of opposite of the soil in a bog that's high in acid. So alkaline is the opposite of acidic. And a fen is fed by groundwater. Fens have lots of peat, but because of their nutrient-rich soil, they also have lots and lots of wildflowers. If you want to see wildflowers and butterflies, visit a fen. And unfortunately, I don't know, I'm sure there are some maybe around here. I don't know of any fens locally to where we are, or at least where I am. So definitely worth checking out, but I'm not sure where those may be. Okay. All right, so that's all for bogs. Let's go ahead, I think we have time, so we'll go ahead and move on to a different kind of wetland in a totally different environment. Okay, so I mentioned that we had to leave Canoe Creek to go to the bog. We had to go even further to get to our next type of wetland. In fact, we had to leave Pennsylvania because we are going to be looking at estuaries and salt marshes. And we don't have estuaries and salt marshes in Pennsylvania because estuaries and salt marshes are located near the ocean. It's where the ocean water and the fresh water start to come together. So this behind me is one of my favorite places. This is Assateague Island, the national seashore near Ocean City, Maryland. So in Maryland, and I've been vacationing in Ocean City since I was very, very young, probably 3 or 4 years old, or would have been some of my first trips to Ocean City. So just a wonderful place to enjoy the beach. And I always, always, always make a point to go at least once while I'm there to visit the beauty of Assateague Island and the national seashore there. It's a big contrast from the busyness and the craziness and the crowds of Ocean City to the beauty of Assateague. So definitely worth checking out if you find yourself on Maryland's eastern shore. Worth the trip. Beautiful, beautiful place. Okay. Estuaries are ocean bays or river mouths where fresh water from a river mixes with salt water from the ocean. This mixed water is called brackish water. Another domain-specific vocab term. Estuaries are very important wetlands. They produce more organic matter per acre each year than farmland. Think about that. They produce more organic material than a farm. Organic material is life-sustaining material. Within estuaries are several kinds of habitats, including rocky shores, mud flats, and salt marshes. And if you want to explore a cool wetland, you definitely should experience a salt marsh. The thing about salt marshes is that you don't have to actually go into them. You can explore a salt marsh with a decent pair of binoculars or a spotting scope. You can view salt marshes from the roadside or from a building, on a deck, or through a window. You can explore by boat, too. Have you ever taken a salt marsh tour boat? They're so much fun and very educational. You can also explore like I do from a kayak. If you like coastal wetlands, you might like my book, Take a Beach Walk. And like all of Jane Kirkland's books, right now, Take a Beach Walk is available for free as a PDF download at janekirkland.com. So be sure to check that out, janekirkland.com, and you can find Take a Beach Walk, along with a lot of other great books there as well. Over on the sidebar, it says Living Proof. I'm not kidding when I say that you can see a lot of species of birds in an estuary. On one of the days I was researching for this book, Rob and I took a walk at the Wetlands Institute in Stone Harbor, New Jersey. During our short walk, we saw laughing gulls, willets, red-winged blackbirds, and osprey. The Institute has a webcam on one of the nests. We saw flocks of double-crested cormorants flying overhead. We also saw both great and snowy egrets, a little blue egret, and both greater and lesser yellowlegs. And those are all terms you could search, and you can look up those different birds, just beautiful creatures that you might want to check out that live in these areas, and kind of shows you how important these wetlands are because of all the different life. And that's just birds that live there, not to mention all the other types of life that live there as well. We heard eastern bluebirds and clapper rails. We saw barn swallows, boat-tailed grackles, short-billed doitures, black oyster catchers, brants, and mallards. We didn't keep a list, so we can't remember all of the birds. Maybe someday you'll be as good at identifying birds as we are. And practice, 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 and you'll be able to see that. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the photos and illustrations and captions. Okay, and looking at the captions here, this first picture, the caption says, I took this photo of a salt marsh at sunset in New Jersey. I call it Birds in the Cordgrass. The tallest white bird is a great egret, and the shorter birds, white birds, are snowy egrets. They were having dinner. The gray, black, and white birds in the background are the black-crowned night herons. Can you guess why I think the night herons were having their breakfast? You kind of see them there. I don't know, any guesses? Okay, and then looking at the bottom picture, it says the northern harrier is a hawk that hunts over the grasses of the marsh. He is easily recognized by the white patch just above his tail, and you can see that right there. And there's another one of those silly pictures. It says, clap your hands and stamp your feet if a fiddler crab you meet. With one large claw and one that's little, he doesn't really have a fiddle, but if you close your eyes, they say, you'll hear his happy music play. So he kind of got that nickname because it almost looks like he could be holding a fiddle with that extra large claw, or holding the fiddle bow in that case with that large claw. And then we'll move on to page 15. You can find a lot of species of birds in salt marshes. See if you can identify the wetlands specialists. The ones with adaptations like long beaks to probe the sand and mud for food, long legs to wade or stand in the shallow water to catch food, or webbed feet to help them move through the water and walk on mud. So adaptations, again, those adaptations, those changes that a species has made in order to best survive in a climate, or in a habitat rather. There's a lot of cordgrass in a salt marsh too. Seriously, a lot. Cordgrass belongs to a group of plants adapted for salty conditions called halophytes. We talked about phyte, P-H-Y-T-E, before, meaning something that really loves an area. Halophytes love salty water, salty conditions. Some grass grows under the water. Eel grass is an example. Eel grass is important because it serves as a critical nursery and shelter for shrimp, minnows, scallops, eels, mussels, crabs, clams, horseshoe crabs, and juvenile fish. So many, many, many creatures depend on that eelgrass, those eelgrass areas, in order to survive to adulthood. So the young are raised there, and then they're able to live there and thrive until they reach adulthood. It's a good place to hide for them from predators. When you explore a salt marsh, look up, down, and all around. During one walk, Rob and I came across a Diamondback Terrapin. It is the only species of turtle in North America that spends its life in brackish water. The turtle had just hatched and was on its way to the water when it crossed our path. Luckily, Rob was carefully observing during our walk, or we might have stepped on the turtle. Thanks, Rob, you're the best. And let's take a look at the photographs, including that Diamondback Terrapin. And then looking at the captions on page 15, the top picture there says, Eel grass grows underwater above and is important and delicate. It needs our care and protection. It makes a great habitat and food source. A lot of people would just call it seaweed, but the actual name for that is eel grass. Okay? And it grows under the water, so it is a submergent plant. Our next picture shows a fiddler crab. It says the fiddler crab gets its name from the male's giant claw. So it has one really, really big claw and another claw that is much smaller. Then the bottom picture is adorable. I don't know if there's a cuter baby animal out there than the baby turtle, but it says Rob, the author's husband, helped this Diamondback Terrapin cross the path. He held it long enough so I could get this photo of the plastron, the bottom of the shell. Look at the tiny size of this terrapin in Rob's hand. I was so excited I forgot to ask Rob to turn the turtle over so I could photograph the carapace. The carapace would be the top of the shell. You can just barely see him kind of peeking out there. So cute. So those are those illustrations and captions. Very cool. So we'll end here with our sidebar on page 15. And it's called Phil's Smorgasbord. Phil Broder, the Director of Education at the Wetlands Institute in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, sees the salt marsh as a cafeteria. Great metaphor there, good figurative language. So the salt marsh is a cafeteria. What could that mean? Well, let's see. He writes, fish, shrimp, crabs, clams, mussels, lobster, oysters, scallops, fish sticks. If you eat seafood, you have to love wetlands. About 2/3 of the commercially caught seafood in North America, or in America, spends some part of its life in a salt marsh. 2/3, 66%, 67% of the seafood eaten in North America spends at least part of its life in the salt marsh. Looking across the marsh at acre after acre of cordgrass, you might think, whoopee, big deal. Grass isn't all that exciting, right? But that grass provides the nutrients that make the marsh work and let everything else grow big. So whether you're dropping a line in the water on weekends or hauling nets on a commercial fishing boat, you need to realize that wetlands put food on our tables and money in our pockets. No wetlands, no seafood. It's that simple. To learn more about the Wetlands Institute, visit their website, www.wetlandsinstitute.org. Definitely be sure to check that out. It's a great website. Who cares? They do. Save the Bay is the oldest and largest organization working exclusively to protect and celebrate the San Francisco Bay. Learn more at savethebay.org. So wetlands aren't just a thing that's around in our area. It's something that are in different places all throughout the country. And we'll look at some other examples here later as well. But San Francisco Bay in California, similar idea there. We still have wetland features there as well. All right, next time we will be exploring a different type of wetland. We'll be heading back toward Canoe Creek, and we'll be talking about the magnificent music makers of freshwater marshes. So that's something to look forward to. It's a great section. Thanks so much, as always, for watching. I'll see you next time.